Quelle émotion, hein, quelle énergie, quelle envie de te faire bouger les choses. Bien, maintenant, Elisabeth, je vais te laisser présenter notre prochain intervenant, Kaj Török, de Max
Absolument.
Burgers.
Absolument. Et nous allons rester dans la même énergie. Now that we know how to become an activist in our everyday life, let's see whether we can do that for a brand. In a context where animal agriculture is responsible for almost 15% of greenhouse gas emission on the planet, we now all know hamburgers are coming with a price on the planet. And as our next speaker is Kaj Török, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer and Chief Reputation Officer at Sweden's most popular burger chain called Max Burgers. In 2019, Max got awarded by the UN for the world's first climate positive menu, and Kaj is going to tell us about this. Fast Company, also one of my favorite magazines, also listed Max as one of the most innovative companies in the world in 1919 as well. Kaj, I'm very, very happy to have you with us today. This is another wonderful morning because I feel that Max Burger is one of the most inspiring brands and one of the most activist brands actually I've seen in the recent years.
Thank you very much, and thanks for allowing me to speak to you. It's a great age when more and more companies are becoming activists to realize that they're part of forming society. So I will just start off with saying that in the 1960s in Sweden, two teenagers met. It was Kurt and Britta, and in 1968 they started off the first Max restaurant just beside a gas station in a small restaurant in the far, far north of Sweden above the polar circle. Today, we have 160 restaurants, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Poland, and even Egypt. But from an international perspective, we're still a really, really tiny player. But this diagram is not about size, it's about taste. So what we can see here is that we outcompete our huge competitors by a long shot. So even though we would grow 200 times in size, we will still not be the same size as McDonald's. We're still adding something good to the world. But we don't want to add just things around taste and food. We want to do it around sustainability too. And I'm just going to go into climate now. We work with health and fairness as well, but I'm just going to go into climate. And if we ask the Swedes, which companies do you know that actively works to take responsibility for the climate? 5% of them says Max. And actually no company comes above that. So in one way, that's just a recognition that we're doing something good. But it's also something else we can learn from this, and that is no brand is higher than Max. So we could have a 95% improvement opportunity here because we are so well known as brands. Many of us, I know in the audience, you have extremely well-known brands. What if you in the future were well known to also help to improve society? I just want to go into the latest thing we've done around climate change now. We've been working actively since 2008, but the latest thing we've done is going climate positive. And this text was really important for us in that step. It's from Paul Hawken's book, Drawdown. And it says, addressing, slowing, or arresting emissions is necessary, but insufficient. If you are traveling down the wrong road, you're still on the wrong road if you slow down. The only goal that makes sense for humanity is to reverse global warming. And if parents, scientists, young people, leaders, and we citizens do not name the goal, there's little chance it will be achieved. What this means is just reducing our emissions is slowing down on the wrong road. We're still approaching catastrophe. We need a new road, and we call that climate positive, that actually helps to reverse global warming. And just to allow you a little bit more to understand where the world is today, so here are 4 scenarios from IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, and their 1.5 degree report. 4 scenarios for you and everyone you love and everyone that comes after them. The gray area are the emissions. The brown area are AFOLU. That's a shortening for agriculture, forestry, and other land use. That could be something that emits carbon, but it could also capture carbon. That's why it goes below the 0 line. And then we have the yellow area, the BECCS, the bioenergy with carbon capture storage. That means you use renewable fuels, but you don't let the exhaust pipe go up into the atmosphere. Instead, you bury the fumes underground so they can come up again. So what we can learn from this, according to scientists, is that scenario P1 and P2, it's just too late for them. We've already emitted too much carbon into the atmosphere. So what we see are scenario P3 and P4, and in those scenarios, we're going to have to capture a lot of carbon from the atmosphere. It's in one way bad news, but it's also good news. We know it now, and if we put it up in the atmosphere, we can draw it down as well. The world needs to go climate positive according to the Paris Agreement. Thank you, Frans, for that one. In 2050, 2060, but companies can go climate positive way before that. Societies can do it, individuals can do it. So why wouldn't we? Because this is just to try to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees. That's what our political ambitions are today. But in a 1.5 degree warmer world in the year 2100, we will have increased the water surface around the world, the ocean surface, with maybe 1 to 2 meters. We might have had 1 billion climate refugees, and 1/3 of all species on Earth might go extinct. That's what our political aims are for today, that will happen and not get worse. Now we're talking about maybe 4 or 6 degree scenarios as well, and we don't even want to think about that. Our definition of climate positive is to reduce emissions in the whole value chain, in line with the 1.5 degree target, while at the same time removing more climate gases than is emitted. So the whole value chain here is an interesting concept. For Max, it's everything from the farmer's land to the guest hand, all transport, all packaging, all waste, also the guest journey back and forth to the restaurant, everything is included. So that's our scope, the wide scope. And we will reduce that over the decades. It's quite of a difficult process, but every year we will remove more climate gases than is emitted. And we have been since 2018 when we turned climate positive. So from a graphical point of view, this is what it's all about. We calculate all the emissions. We plant trees, restore forests where it used to be trees. And when those trees grow, they capture carbon. If we capture the same amount of carbon as is emitted, we become neutral. And if we do more, we go positive. The trees I'm talking about here are third-party verified and certified. And they have not just the capacity to draw down carbon, but also many local benefits. So they're situated in the tropics, in Uganda, in Nicaragua, in Mexico. And here they are they're mitigating poverty, reducing erosion, reducing drought, and increasing biodiversity. So that's what we want to see from a good way of capturing carbon. But how can we at Max be sure we're climate positive when there's no international standard for it yet? Well, at least there is one single international independent standard for climate neutral. It is found in the ISO 1421. And we follow that one, and we go way further than that one in many ways, not least capturing more carbon. Ernst & Young have third-party reviewed our calculations, and that we go further than the ISO 1421 standard. And the trees, as I said, are Plan Vivo certified. So they actually are there. It's not a dream. But if that was not enough to convince you we're climate positive, or convince ourselves we're climate positive, we're sure, of course, but it was great to get this award from UN last year. Here's me and my boss, Christopher Bergfors, the son of Kurt and Britta. So we're still family owned. And of course, we are happy. But what is more important than that is the power it gives to climate positive companies. Because we see a climate positive revolution right now. More and more companies are promising they're going to go climate positive, like IKEA, H&M, and Microsoft, or although they call it carbon negative, it's the same thing. And more companies are going climate positive already now. So it's really nice to see that the UN's climate experts found this was world-class in 2019. So how do we reduce our emissions? It is extremely important. Well, in 2018, we launched the world's first climate labeled menu. So our guests can see what are the main emitters, what are the smaller emitters, so they can choose between them at least to make informed decisions. And I'm happy to see that this kind of concept of carbon labeling in products is coming out more and more often now. So Unilever is going there, Oatly is going there, and many others. But what we can see then at Max is that the classical beef burger, our cheese and bacon, has 4.2 kilo carbon dioxide equivalents in emissions, while the barbecue plant beef has only 0.5. So here we can reduce the emissions with 85% just by moving the hand to something that tastes excellent. The barbecue plant beef is very popular and very tasty. Reducing emissions with 85%, that's a lot, because if you go from a normal fossil car to a Tesla, you would probably reduce your emissions with 50%. What this means is that the barbecue plant beef is already a super duper Tesla on our menu. It's here. And it's actually not just at Max, it's everywhere. It exists. So you can make these super duper Teslas at home. Irrespective if it's a burger or something else made out of plants. Our goal during 2022 is that every second meal sold should be made without beef, because that's what really stands for half of all our carbon emissions. And the sales goes like this. The red meat meals are going down as a proportion of total sales, and without red meat are going up. And this reduces our climate impact in a quite fast way, actually. The reason why the sales of without red meat are going up is because they taste well, but they have increased, especially the part that are the green burgers, the lacto-ovo vegetarian burgers and the fully plant-based burgers. They have increased from 2% of total sales in 2015 to 22% of sales in 2019. That's actually 1,100% increase in just 4 years. So what you can see at this picture right here is that we are changing business model. We're changing business model from the classical hamburger that is a climate culprit to a burger that could be made out of so many tasty things without a high climate impact. That means we've also changed our name in 2017 from Max Hamburger Restaurants to Max Burgers, so that there be no doubt about what we are and what kind of business we're in. Now you might start to wonder, how expensive is it to go climate positive? Well, for Max, it cost us 0.4% of our total turnover. I could have told you it cost us millions and millions of euros and pretend it was expensive. But I don't want to, because it's not expensive, and because I want you guys to go climate positive as well. In one way, it's you can do it if you want to, because it's not that expensive, but there's also a business case hidden here. If you can increase your turnover with 1% with the help of going climate positive, it's a really sound business case. 2%, it's an awesome business case. And at Max, I'm sure we're living at those levels now. So climate positive is helping us forward. It helps us sell more. It helps us reach new markets. It helps us reach new customers. It helps us to attract and retain talent. And not least, it helps us to change our business model over time so that it's more adapted to what society needs in the long term. We're a family-owned company. We want to be family-owned for many generations. We need a business model that is fit for that. If you're now starting to get eager to go climate positive, how do you do it? How do you do it? You work in 3 steps. The first step is to measure everything, all the emissions in the full value chain. And that is kind of complicated, actually. And you need experts to help you, internal experts or external ones. The second step is to reduce your emissions in the whole value chain. And that will be the hardest thing you do around climate change, probably, because it might mean that you need to go into your core product, your core business offer, and change that, upgrade it, do something differently. Like we switched from beef burgers to plant beef. Since 2013, we've reduced our climate emissions per earned krona or dollar or euro with 22%. So we're at least delivering on that. And we're going to have to reduce our emissions with 4% every year until the year 2050. And when and then you capture at least 110% of the emissions. And that will likely be the most expensive thing you do around climate change, around going climate positive. You have to invest in trees or other ways to remove carbon. So if you're wondering more about the details on how to go climate positive, you can find that on clipup.org. It's a website that we created so that journalists, consumers, and other companies can find the criteria and go climate positive. ClipUp is an acronym for climate positive products or climate positive planet or both. And these brands are now registered there. They live up to all of these criteria. So we have electricity company, communications agency, shoes, mailing service, car sharing service in New Zealand, consultancy, music festival, beverages. You never know which company will go climate positive next, but we know there's more in line. So who will be the first climate positive company in France? I'm wondering. That would be a thing to see. The first time I talked about climate change was in 1991. I was a student at that time, and I realized that there was probably quite sound science behind climate change, and I needed to be part of the solution. And every day since then, I've been buying stuff that destroys the planet every day. Today, I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. It's Joar and it's Vidar, 18 and 16. And being a parent, forced by everyday decisions to destroy the future of your own children, is not reasonable. I destroy the future of my own children. That makes me angry. You should be angry too. You have the possibility today to choose between products that are either really bad for the climate or just a little bit bad. But you hardly ever have the opportunity to buy things that helps to restore the climate, to make it better. We put the carbon up there, we can put it back down again. So imagine one day you wake up in your bed and the bed is climate positive. And you put on your morning robe and the morning robe is climate positive. You take up the brush to brush your hair. If you don't have any hair, you brush the dog's or the cat's hair, and the brush is climate positive. That's a future that is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaj. So there are many questions, but you answer most of them while you were talking. Celine is asking, as you change your offer, did you lose or win consumers? And I could add, do you see that you have a change of that you managed to change the consumer's mindset and also attract new consumers?
Yeah, we have, and we've done it in many different ways. We know our guests appreciate this a lot. Our co-workers do it too, and of course we can calculate the case on this. We've seen we take the conscious consumers from our competitors, so we can actually see that kind of statistics with our climate work. But just to give you a concrete case, that when we expanded into Poland, we're really small in Poland still, and we're not well known. The world's largest mall owner, Unibail Radamco Westfield, they said, okay, maybe we want to open up with you guys, but do you have any wow factor? And then we talked to them about climate change and climate positive, and they said, that's a wow factor. We also want to work with climate positive, or with climate in this kind of proactive way. So we're opening up our best locations for you. That's worth so much money for us. It's the best locations, and location is everything for restaurants.
Actually, there's also a question about you coming in France. So
okay, yeah. Whenever we find the right master franchisee. So if any one of you in the audience think you're that one or know that one, I think France would be a great country to go to.
Elisabeth, ton micro est en mute.
Yes, thank you, Anna. We have a lot of questions also on plant-based products. So one person is asking about the ingredients of BBQ plant beef, which is not, the point is not at all to do it at home, I guess, but to better understand how do you ensure that the ingredients of plant-based products are still natural and sustainable? And there's another question asking whether, like, if everybody in the world goes vegan, is it not gonna deplete the soils and overexploit natural resources as well?
Yeah. So let's just get this from a little wider perspective first. That of the protein in the world, 20% come from animals, but the land use from animals in the world is 83%. That means that that when we reduce meat consumption, we will have a lot of areas to do other things with. We can grow things on them, or we can just plant trees on them and capture carbon, or we can rewilder them so it becomes nature again, whatever we want to do. So land will be there when we make this shift. The ingredients in our burgers are a little bit varying, but quite often it's texturized soy and other things like actually cabbage or wheat. But the texturized soy never comes from areas where we have deforestation, like South America or anything. So it's not part of that cycle. And I think in the future we will probably find something that tastes as well or even better from Swedish ingredient from the beginning, or maybe French, who knows. Yeah.
Okay. Charlotte is asking, it's beyond planting trees, can you have an influence on regenerative agriculture? How can we play on that ground?
Yeah, we could. So I think what happens now is that we're buying quite a lot from where we find the best products, mainly in Sweden, but also in Europe and so on. And of course, we could try to influence them somehow, but we're a really small player, so they won't listen to us alone, unless we're a major player. In some Swedish instances, we can be seen as that. I think it is a little bit difficult for us to do more than our code of conduct. Of course, we have a code of conduct where we, put all these demands on what they should do. But when we go into beef, for example, we're buying just a tiny little piece of so many different cows that we need to work together with other ones to create this change. But we have those kind of discussions with the Swedish Farmers Association. How can we reduce the climate impact of beef? And it said, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together with other people. And I think these kind of changing agriculture is the second one. It's to go far, and we need to do it in bigger corporations. So we're open to that. We can't do it alone at this time.
There has been historically debate about planting tree as a kind of climate washing, companies like keeping the trend of their emissions going up and planting more and more trees and not changing their business model. And clearly you have demonstrated how Max Burger is already changing its business model, switching from beef burger to plant-based burgers. But what do you think about this tree planting? I mean, for companies who are just doing that, maybe, or generally speaking, this risk of climate washing?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's a common myth, and I would say it's definitely a myth, because who of you would buy a gym card without having the intentions to actually go to the gym? I don't know. That's how it is. Why would you take these costs if you don't want to do anything around the climate? It's the companies that doesn't care about the climate. Those are the one that doesn't buy offsets. It's just crazy to go into that. So, and of course, I realize that some of the companies that are buying offset haven't done much, but there are international investigations into this. And what we can see is that companies that buy offsets reduce their own emissions 3 times faster than those that doesn't buy emissions. We did a similar investigation in Sweden and saw that the Swedes, individuals who buy carbon offsets, are twice as committed to reduce their climate impact as those who doesn't. So it's just, it is one of these myths that we need to bust, and we need to bust it fairly quickly now, because we cannot reach the 1.5 degree target from Paris without making carbon offsets, without planting trees. We cannot do it. So it's not a matter if we do it, it's just a matter of how we do it. And I think in the future, we will do it better than we do it today.
Okay, so maybe a last question, and from Nicolas, who said for how long Max Burger has really started its journey, and what was the starting point? I think you said that you, as a father, you had this problem, but is there another starting point for the whole company you had?
I mean, already in '68, when Kurt and Breda founded it, they kind of felt that they want to have a decent business. So that's been there, and the first kind of registered climate activity we had, or environment activity we had, was in 1969 when they chose to invest in an aluminium box to recycle cardboard instead of buying winter tires. And this is above the polar circle in Sweden. You really need winter tires there. So we've done some of that, but I think with An Inconvenient Truth in 2005, 2006, the movie, we started really to think about, are we a part of the problem? How big part of a problem are we? And then in 2007, we created this baseline analysis. And from that date, actually, we have the food industry's widest climate analysis. And when we saw those figures, we were kind of realizing Max is a part of the problem. So what do you do when you're part of the problem? You become part of the solution.
Exactly. It's exactly what we said yesterday also. And Inconvenient Truth, c'est le film dont j'ai parlé hier qui s'appelle Une vérité qui dérange, le film d'Al Gore. Voilà.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kai, again. I think it was very powerful, and I think we're all convinced now, and if we were not previously, that climate action is urgent now, not for tomorrow, because even if what we choose to do today will have impact on the climate in decades, so which is why we need to ask now, but it's such an important topic. We know that, especially in 2020, we will have reduced our global CO2 emissions by 7 or 8%, we'll see, which is the reduction that we would need each year to reach the Paris Agreement, of course, without the economic crisis and the lockdowns. So, which gives us an idea of the huge challenge that we have in front of us. And I think Max's example is so inspiring in proving that this is possible for a brand to take up the challenge and change its business model really deeply. So thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Merci beaucoup and bon voyage.